We'll see. Let me look at the.
Oh yeah, I see it.
You see it on the. I have to check my phone. Is the only way I can see if
On
it's
the
working.
FB, I see it. Yeah.
Mine just said we're now live on Story Lab, so I guess we're being broadcast and people probably tuned in.
Yeah.
Where is it?
It's on Story Lab Chicago's page is one of the pages.
Okay.
I think I got a notification because I'm an admin on that, but it probably pushed out to everything.
Yeah, it seems like it's working.
Yeah, I think we're good, John.
I see it.
I may have to refresh.
I have to check my phone. Is the only way.
It's live. I see it.
Mine just said we're now live on
Everybody.
Story Lab, so I guess we're being broadcast and people probably.
Oh, so you have to mute if you're listening to it on your computer. You have to mute the computer because it'll
Oh yeah.
will become like an ecosystem.
Yeah, with that. I closed it out.
Looks like there's a
Okay.
bit of a delay as well.
Yes, it will definitely. That's another thing is other people will see us talking about 10 seconds after we're talking, so it can get real confusing.
Do you have it on gallery? John?
Right now it should be on gallery mode, but we will put it on the speaker mode eventually here. Okay, well, with that, I think we could start.
Yeah.
I think
I'll try
we've
to
already
see-
started.
I know.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Digital Online Computer Storytelling event. We're all hosts of this event. Meg Mattingly and I are hosting from Austin, Texas.
And I'll be hosting from Chicago. I'm thrilled to be. It is such a thrill to get to work with the Austin folks. I've gotten to tell stories down there, but it's really nice to kind of have us in the same virtual room.
I
Yeah.
also want to note we've also got storytelling event representation in Austin here from Testify, from Hyde Park Story Night. Story Night? Is it Story Night? Yeah. I don't know
Yes.
why that's stuck in my brain. Yeah, so we've got a wide array of people and experiences and storytellers and playwrights and all of that here represented tonight.
Yeah, and we're really excited. We know it's been a tough week everywhere for pretty much everyone. And part of the reason we're joining together tonight is to just give you a little break from the news, a little break from this new shift that we've had in life, and to just give you a chance to kick back wherever you're at and listen to some stories. And we're really grateful that you are here to listen to the ones we want to share with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you for tuning in. If you're tuning in on the computers, we're going to have 6 to 7 storytellers tell stories this evening. They will be telling it from their living rooms and their bedrooms and their houses and their homes. We're all in individual spots and staying safe. So with that, we may talk a little bit about what we do in Austin. We do a thing called Backyard Story Night. It is a free thing. Anybody can do it and they can tell whatever story they want. We've been doing it for about 7 years, and it's Meg and I started doing it in her backyard about 6.5 years ago.
Yeah. And it just kind of started as a actually Scott was I did my hand like you're sitting next to me, but you're on the computer next to me, and at least in my format. Scott was kind of our first kind of showcase when we did Backyard Story Night. And then we did it one time and people are like, when's your next one? When's your next one? And so it was a really cool organic thing that happened where John and I both just love community and bringing people together and storytelling. And so we really got to evolve into this beautiful thing and ebbed and flowed through the years. And so, we believe that everyone's story matters and everyone has a story to tell. And I'm just so honored I get to be a part of this, and that we've gotten to be a part of Backyard Story Night and meet so many amazing people, and and be connected to Scott, who does amazing things in Chicago too. So
Thanks, Meg. And I want to say I'm really thrilled to represent some of Chicago storytelling tonight with these amazing Chicago tellers who've agreed to join us. I won't even mention my own things because it's only a drop in the bucket with what's going on in Chicago with storytelling. It's an amazing community with people doing so many different things, so many different groups spreading it all over. It's an incredibly inclusive community where if you're a human being, we know you've got stories and we want to get you on stage. And so I'm really thrilled to have this sampling of Chicago storytelling here tonight and have a chance to, again, collaborate with some amazing Austin folks.
Yeah, and I just wanted to also say, if you know of folks who are super struggling with being alone maybe right now, or just need something to do, this time to send this to them, to maybe also them just not feel so alone and know that we're all in this together. No matter if we're in Texas or Chicago or wherever we are, or across the globe, wherever, we're all dealing with it. So yeah, share it with your friends just so that they can have a fun night, so they're not just sitting on their couch watching reruns of The Office over and over and over again.
Also, I want to throw out, here's a fun game you can play tonight while you watch this storytelling event. Which one of us is which are wearing pants and which are not? I'm going to give you a head start. I am not.
Also, which of us are drinking and which ones are not? Yeah.
Mine dissolves into the quilt. It's carbonated water.
Cool. All right, John. Well,
All right, so with that, I think we're going to start out with our first. Oh, wait, what?
I said, do we have any more announcements or things? Are we ready to go?
I think we could roll.
Really quickly, turn off your phones at home. It's not going to disturb anybody telling or listening, but with the constant barrage of news and things that we all know about that we could use a break from, maybe you could give yourself a break right now. Unless you're watching this on a phone, then don't turn it off, because that would be. But please give yourself a little break. Whatever's happening is going to be happening when this is done. You're going to know, you're going to keep informed, but it's not a bad idea to just slide that thing away and enjoy some stories.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, John, are you going to put it on the different mode?
So yeah, I guess I'll put us in. So our first storyteller, without further ado, is Matthew Stoner. He's a host of Hyde Park Storytelling and a very awesome guy. Give a hand for Matthew Stoner!
Yes!
Woo!
Hey everyone, thank you for having me. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I guess thumbs up all around. Cool, thank you. I wake up to my best friend Joe shaking me, and he says, Matt, are you okay? Matt, are you okay? And I'm confused because my last memory is not having Joe on top of me, and the back of my head hurts, and I'm starting to develop a headache, and I'm confused, and Joe is talking to me and yelling at me, and there's the sound of the Midway, the sound of the Gravitron just next to me, and the sound of a very rickety carnival roller coaster off to the side. And I get up and I stand up and I'm confused. And suddenly my friend Jennifer comes up to me and she says, Matt, I'm so sorry, Matt. I'm like, what happened? My last memory, I was just talking to you. And she says, I'm sorry, we were talking and my ex-boyfriend came up and punched you in the back of the head and knocked you out. And she told me bluntly, and I'm confused because I don't remember falling. I don't remember getting hit. And my masculinity is hurt a little bit at this point, because my very first fight as an 18-year-old as a teenager, I lost it. And so Joe's like, yeah, he just like came up and like ran off. And so my head is pounding, and Joe and I look at each other, and we look at Jennifer, and we're like, what does he look like? This is my chance to maybe, I'm 0-1 at this point, but maybe I can be 1-1 in my first few fights. Jennifer's like, well, he's 6'2" at this point, but maybe I can be 1-1, built like a tank. And suddenly, I know I'm not gonna fight him. I'm not gonna win in this fight. And so what I lack in physical strength at this time, I make up for in friends. And so Joe and I look at each other, and in a series of montages, we go to gather our bannermen. all of my friends from high school. Just like if there's a vampire in the village, we are knocking on every single door. We gather Blaine, we gather Kevin, Kyle, Carl, everyone that we can find so that we can find Jennifer's ex-boyfriend, Robert, and intimidate him and scare him, because that's how I'm going to win. I'm going to win by fear, not from using my fists, but from fear. That's how I will gain back all of my whatever masculinity is and whatever I might have lost at this time. And we gather the bannermen, and Jennifer's with us, and she's our scout. And so we're walking through the carnival, through the midway, just a gang of people, 8 or 9 teenagers, just all in line. It's like the West Side Story. And Jennifer says, there he is. And so we just like rush him, and he sees us. He sees this gang of people just running towards him, and he just runs and he takes off. And he gets to the edge of the carnival, and we surround him, and he says, dude, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he looks at all of us, and he's like, I know you guys probably want to fight me. How about we fight tomorrow? I don't know what happened, transpired so quickly, but somehow he convinced 8 of my friends and me that we're going to have a trial by combat in the morning. And so I'm not going to fight him, but my friend Kevin, like Game of Thrones, he steps forward and will fight in my honor. One of my bannermen will fight for my honor. We don't know if Robert's going to actually show up. And so we all go to sleep that night. We wake up and we get there at 10:30. My friends are still there. My friends there are all on time, and Robert's there too. He actually is he's gonna show up for a fight. This is what Ohio is. People just fight randomly in Ohio. I got the headset, don't mind me. And he is going to fight my best friend Kevin. And they square off, they roll their sleeves up, and they circle each other in what I can only describe as basically Nintendo Entertainment System's Punch Out. Is they are going back and forth, trading blows. And in my head, I'm watching them fight. This is not a pretty fight. This is not a fight of well-trained MMA fighters. If you've ever seen a bar fight, they're just not pretty. And so they're punching each other, they're taking blows, they're trading blows. No one is dodging or blocking. They're just trying to like win. And I'm like, man, this is not what I expected. This is not what I expected to try and win at a fight. And so eventually they stop fighting. They look at each other and they shake hands. And Robert looks at me and Kevin looks at me as if I'm going to like call the fight of who the winner is, if I can call the fight off. And I just say, okay. And they shake hands. Robert walks into the carnival bloodied, and Kevin rips off the other half of his jean and looks at me and he's like, dude, thanks for letting me fight for you. And I look at Kevin, I said, thanks for fighting for me. Confused of not feeling sure about what just transpired. I look at Joe and he shrugs his shoulder, and Kevin walks into the carnival and we walk into the carnival, confused, but feeling courageous that my friends fought for me, that my bannermen showed up and continued to fight for me in their best Ohio way possible. Thank you.
Yay.
I have never been in a fight.
Yay. That was great.
Hey, real
Yes.
quick, John.
Beautiful.
John, can I just give a little background as to why you and Matthew have those backdrops? Because that it might be,
Sure.
yeah. So for those folks who are either joining us from Chicago or where else or new to Backyard Story Night, the picture backdrop that John and Matthew have, my computer's too old. It wouldn't let me upload a cool backdrop. But that is sort of every Backyard Story Night that we've had. That is what we always have. We've had for the last 7 years, and it sort of represents us as storytellers, as us as people that we're past work. And so anyway, I just think it's a cool little symbolic thing that we do that I wanted to share with those who don't know about the backdrop. So anyway, that's all I'm gonna say. John, you want to introduce,
And with that, I will introduce our next storyteller.
or is Scott gonna introduce the next person?
I
Well,
am the next person.
He is the next person, so I have to do it.
I should look at the list. My bad.
Yes.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So our next storyteller is a nice young man. I know him from many years ago when we worked together and we made waffles at our desk together. And we also rode our bikes, and one time had to stuff our bike wheels with leaves because the wheels, the air stopped working, and we read somewhere that you could put leaves in the tire, which kind of worked.
A little bit.
It was a fun event. But with that, we're going to give the spotlight to Scott Whitehair.
All right. Thank you so much. And Brewster makes the best desk waffles. I can vouch for that. I am dedicating this story tonight to one of our other tellers on the call, Kevin Biolsi, because I believe it is the 15th time he's heard it. And so I'm excited to share it with all of you. And of course, Kevin, once again. So thanks for listening. I strained in the back of the cafe, trying to look and see what was happening on the horizon, the little dot by the microphone. Next to me was my big, dumb ginger friend, Mike, and he was angry. I could feel the heat coming off of him. And I don't blame him, because we were in our early 20s. It was a Saturday night in Pittsburgh, PA, and we were at a poetry reading. Now, the reason we're at the poetry reading was that recently I had decided I wanted a creative life. I wanted to be an artist, but I had no idea how. Nobody taught those things to me. I came from the family of a steel mill worker. We were very practical people. We had some form of ground meat 4 to 5 nights a week. I bought my clothes at Value City. I'm built like a wrestler and football player, which I was. I have absolutely no neck if you take a look. And so I thought, to be an artist, to be creative, I'm going to have to change, because I'm not like those people. I need to be like them. I need to act like them. I need to dress like them. I need to talk like them. But I needed a role model. I needed to find out how I could do that. And so I began to look to find those people so that I too could become an artist, so that I could change. So when I opened up the paper one day and there was this poetry reading on Saturday night on the south side of the city, I thought, that's it. They'll know. That's a place to start. Now, Mike came along with me because I didn't want to go alone. And I had promised him 1 hour at a poetry reading, and then I would buy his beers for the rest of the night. And on East Carson Street, there's nothing but bars. And so he very enthusiastically agreed. Now, when we got there, we noticed up front, there were so many people who looked like they belonged there. They were very, very sharply dressed. They were all sitting, having pleasant conversations, all kind of looking around to see who else is in the room. But there was no room for us. And so we were shuttled to the back of this cafe. No, this cafe was long. It was like a hallway. And so we went back and back and back until there was a corner where people like us were. And we got crammed in, and it was hot and it was crowded. And at this point, Mike leans into me and he goes, "Hey, Shakespeare, you got 1 hour." And it was time for the poetry. Now, the first guy who got up, he had a blazer on with patches on the sleeves, corduroy underneath. He had a novelty t-shirt. He had the most magnificent mutton chops I'd ever seen, horn-rimmed glasses, hair slicked, and he had a binder with him. And he came walking up to the microphone and he started. but we couldn't hear anything because we were so far in the back. All that we could make out through the microphone at that distance was his arrogance and his pleasure with his own voice. It was kind of like, and those of us in the back made eye contact with each other, like trying to communicate. Can you hear this? I can't hear this. Are we supposed to hear this? Is this for us? Are we even a part of this? Mike leaned in. His lips brushed my ear like a lover. And he went, oh, ho, 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 ho. Am I gonna wail on you when we get out of this place? But it was time for the next poet. Now, this woman got up. She weighed probably 80 pounds soaking wet. 2/3 of her body were scarves just wrapped and wrapped and wrapped. She had a little beret perched on her curly gray hair. She had impossibly small glasses the size of dimes perched on the very tip of an impossibly small nose. And she held out her book and opened it, and she began. Now, this time we could make out a little more, but it was mainly just an occasional word. She was like, willow tree, ennui. And to make matters worse, the guy running the cafe, for some reason, thought this would be a good time to start cleaning spoons. And he's running the cappuccino machine. He's even like opening and closing the cash register for absolutely no reason. And those of us in the back made eye contact again. And this time it wasn't a question. This time it was to confirm. This isn't for us. We're not a part of this. I looked at Mike, and he had almost a dreamlike look on his face. He was clenching his fists so tight I thought they would disappear into themselves, and he was turning red. And it was terrifying. But it was time for the last poet. Now, a guy I hadn't seen before got up from a corner, and he had unruly gray hair coming out from underneath a mesh back cap worn unironically. He had on one of those old softball jackets that you get for playing softball for a bar in the area. And the name of the bar was so old it had been worn off the back. And underneath one arm, he had just a stack full of papers, no folder or anything. And I can't confirm this because I was too far away, but if I had to guess, he smelled like a chipped ham sandwich and cigarettes. And as he bumbled through the crowd, in his other arm, I noticed he had a boombox. And he gets to the front of the room and he lays all his papers out on the counter and he puts the boombox down and he presses play. And Bob Marley's Jammin' starts playing. And as he starts to pull out random pieces of paper, he's just bobbing his head, enjoying himself, until he turns it off suddenly. And he says, I don't know, these things get kind of quiet. I like to start with a little bit of music. And then he looks to the back. The first time somebody that night looked to our back corner. And he said, hey, you guys hear me back there? If you can't, go and yell something or shit. My name's Dog. Well, it's Jimmy, but they call me Dog. I got some poems for you. And then he started, and it was like time stopped. Because Jimmy drew upon 40 years experience as an undercover detective in Pittsburgh and Wilkinsburg, and pulled these stories from his career. And he spit, he raged, he pounded, he pleaded. They were stories in our language, poems that we understood, that were for us. They had names like Nichols got shot in the ass, or Lexi the junkie. And he spit and he swore and he screamed. When he did a poem about an officer who had seen too much and taken his own life, we held our breath. And then we lost our breath laughing when he did a poem about Gummy, a burglar who had showed up for his arraignment wearing dentures he had stolen in the robbery. He pointed, he challenged, he yelled. And those of us in the back heard every word. We made eye contact again, communicating to each other. This was for us. This was for all of us. When Jimmy Lent ended his last poem was about his final tour of Vietnam, it was to complete stunned silence. And I looked over at Mike. His mouth was just hanging open. Mike, who would go on to become a policeman himself, went, wow. And then it was over. I so badly wanted to get to the front. Jimmy scooped up his boombox and his papers, and I tried to fight forward, but there were too many people, and all the really important people in the front were getting up to furiously shake hands with the second most important person in the room and talking and patting each other on the back. And before I could get to the front, Jimmy swept out into the night and was gone. Now, like many of us on this call, many of us in the arts or in whatever we do, I'm a mosaic of tiny pieces of inspiration I've gathered over my lifetime. Famous people, historical figures, people on this call, people in the storytelling community, people I've met, people I've never met. But as an artist, the artist that I someday hope to be, I was born right there in that back corner of that crowded cafe in Pittsburgh on a Saturday night. I want to tell you a little bit about Jimmy Cvetic. Jimmy spent 40 years, maybe longer, as a detective. He wrote many, many poems. He has a few slim volumes you can find online. When he retired, he spent his time running a boxing gym, toy drives, anything he could, under the motto of the kids first, or always for the kids. He did so much. He never truly retired. He just changed how he helped people. I learned so much from him that night. Jimmy wasn't concerned about getting in the paper. Jimmy just read the paper. He wasn't worried about being in some scene. The only scene he was ever concerned with was taped off with yellow caution tape. Jimmy didn't want credit for doing good work. He just did good work. I learned so much. I learned that it's about the connection, not the conduit. It's about community, not some clique. I learned that you could do things your way and have success, but for God's sake, when you did, be humble about it. And I learned that I could be the son of a steel mill worker, wear clothes from Value City, have absolutely no neck, and be a writer, and be an artist, and be a storyteller. I never got to meet Jimmy. He passed away in the last year. I wish I could have told him the effect he had on me. I wish I could have had a chance to meet him formally. But in the back of one of his books, he's quoted as saying, he's always thought we could change the world. Well, Jimmy, on that night in Pittsburgh, in the back of that cafe, for at least one of us, you did. Thanks. Oh, I think I've got the next. Oh no, I don't have the next intro. I'm like, do I have more to do?
I will introduce the next. Scott, that was amazing. Thank you.
That was.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening.
All right. So our next storyteller hails from Austin. He has his own awesome event here in town in Austin called Testify. He has a wonderful heart and spirit, and I'm so excited to hear his story tonight and that he's sharing tonight. So Paul, welcome to the metaphorical stage.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul, woohoo!
I got out of the Army in 1987 and I immediately wanted to finish school. I knew the Army wasn't for me, and I had only gone into it to get enough money to finish my undergraduate school, which they were more than willing to give me, sort of like, hey, please leave and go to school. So I did. I went to graduate school as well. I made it through. And when I went from undergraduate to graduate school, there were a couple things I was taking with me. I really love sports. And thank God I did, because I needed that release when I was in grad school. The other thing I really needed was friends. And luckily, I had a really great nerd community in college that supported me when I was in the Army, and they sent me all my D&D books, and I was able to teach people in the Army how to play D&D. And of course, when I came home, I played D&D with my friends, and we all moved in together, and it was a thing. We made a little commune. They hated that word, being good capitalist Republicans for the most part, but they hated that word. And I really liked it. I wanted to build a community. I really liked the idea that we were going to form some sort of alliance and community. And then I got into grad school, and most of them had flunked out of undergraduate because they absolutely were too smart for it. They would read all the books before the semester started, and then they were depressed when they went into their first day of classes, and they'd start on chapter 1, page 1. And it was challenging me for me to watch that. For me, graduate school was the greatest opportunity of my life. I was getting to still play Ultimate with the team. I was getting to keep my friends. And more importantly, I was getting to study communication. I was going to teach people how to give presentations and do a good job with that. And I was getting to teach freshmen through seniors. And most of the classes I taught had seniors because they had not taken this class till the end. Because in my class, they had to stand up and talk. And it seems that's a universal fear for a lot of people, especially undergraduate students. And it was weird making that transition from undergraduate to graduate. And as I did, I realized, oh, I do understand the theory, and I can help them translate it into practical application. And so as the TA basically for their classes, I taught them the process. Now, when I went to graduate school, I had a new set of friends. They were from all over, and they threw parties, and they did things. They drank and did drugs. These were things that, those three things were not things I did. I never knew what to do at a party, so I never went to them. And I was, I'd hang out with my friends and we'd play games. And so I committed. I said at the end of this first semester, I'm going to throw a party. I'm going to throw a party for all the kids I'm teaching in these classes. And so the semester went through, and I was disappointed that some of the kids failed. Like, I took it as a personal failure of mine that some of them did not pass my class. And when the party came, the party was a great success. People came to the party. They drank the beer. They ate the food. I had cleaned the house. My nerdy friends never went into the kitchen to clean. So I had to do that before the party. And after the party, I had to clean it again. But we had this thing where I brought new people into the house, and they met new people. This was an important thing for them. And it was kind of a new thing for me. And I liked it. I wanted more of that. That was a new experience, and I felt like I was successful at it. So at the end of the next semester, again, I had that same feeling. I had failed because there were kids that failed my class, but the party was really successful. This party was super successful because some of the people actually hooked up at the party. And I thought, oh, that must be a success factor. In both cases, I took partially full kegs of beer back. So maybe that was a fail fact. I don't know how you measure party success, but that was where I was in my head. And I found myself contemplating who I wanted to be that summer. Did I want to be the guy that got all their students through class? Because that seemed incredibly important to me. And I'll just throw the party at the end of the semester. It'll be fine. So I went and talked to some of my professors, and I said, what am I doing wrong? And they said, well, you want to be friends with your students. You can't do that. You can't be friends with your students. You have to come in, you have to be an authoritarian, you have to lay down the law, and then you have to tell them what you expect of them, and then you have to validate that they are either doing it or not, and that is it. And I had been in the Army. I had seen plenty of people who were able to do that, and I thought, I don't like this role, but I can play this role if I have to. So the first day of class, I walked in, and I did. I played the hard ass. This is what's expected of you. If you don't do it, you're going to fail. You won't graduate. If you don't graduate, you won't go on to that cool job you want, and you'll be stuck here, and you'll take this class again. So if you don't like it now, how are you going to like it the second time? And I am just mean, and I am gruff. And then I realized I can't sustain this. This is not something I'm going to be able to sustain. So I immediately break into my normal personality, and I start trying to, do the icebreakers that you do in this type of class where there's 30 kids and you're trying to get them all to talk to each other. And we start going around the room talking about things, and somebody says something about country music. And I said, oh, I love the Rolling Stones. They have a really great parody of a country music song. They really make fun of country music. It's so funny. And the room goes quiet. And I knew I had lost every one of them. But it was different. They were angry at me. They were looking at me like, who is this jerk? We don't like it. He is the enemy. And so over the next couple of classes, it became apparent that they were actually paying attention as a unit in the lecture part of the classes. And then they were bringing it back to me and challenging me if I said anything that wasn't right. And they were challenging me at every level, and they were helping each other with their speeches, and they were getting ready to perform, and they would support each other. And I was like, they hate me, but we're being really successful, and nobody skipped coming to their speeches. And I'm trying to understand if I like this or I don't. And I'm trying to like gauge this. And by the end of the semester, they hate me, but every one of them is going to pass. And I am trying to gauge that as the final comes. And I go around and say, hey, don't forget, I got a big party tonight. I had told them about it in class. I got a big party tonight. There'll be a keg, lots of food. And I hand out all the flyers. They take their final. And as they're leaving, one of three things happens. They either put the flyer back on my desk, they put the flyer in the trash, some of them not politely, or they take the flyer, they fold it up gently, they look at me and they say, I'll see if I can make it. And they all leave. Now my roommates are at home right now, my geekiest, greatest friends, and they are all patiently waiting for this big party where I'm going to bring a lot of people, and they're going to get to talk to people they don't get to talk to. And this is a big deal for them. And we get to the house, and 7:30 comes, and then 8, and then 8:30 comes, and no one has shown up. And at 9 o'clock, my friends are feeling so bad for me that they say, hey, Paul, let's go out and throw a Frisbee. We have a really nice lighted area outside where we can see, and everybody has a lot of space, and it's in an intersection. So we're literally throwing across the intersection, and cars are coming through the intersection, and I am just mad. And so as one of the cars comes through, I yell, free beer! And I just yell it at the top of my lungs. And the car slows down a little and then just continues through the intersection. And every time a car comes through, I yell, free beer. And eventually one of the cars stops. And the car backs up and the window rolls down, and he looks at me, he goes, did you say free beer? I said, yeah, I threw a party and nobody came. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, we got food too. And I said, come on in. And he goes, no. But maybe, can I bring some friends? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And then he drives off. And so we hang out playing Frisbee. It's getting cold at this point. It's about 9:30 and we all go inside. We stick a VHS tape, for time reference, into the VHS player, and we start watching a movie. And about 15 minutes into the movie, there's a knock at the door. And I open the door, and there are 30 people. This guy went and got 30 people to come to my party. He didn't know who I was, and he made my night. They came in, they drank the beer, they ate the food, they introduced themselves, they knew how to act at a party. They engaged everybody. All my friends were talking to somebody. And for 2.5 hours, it was just perfect, and we forgot about everything else. And at the end of the night, these people were so nice, they cleaned the house better than I had cleaned it to prepare for the party. They broke up into teams and just took on sections, and it was beautiful. And when they all left, I realized I had thrown a successful party and all my kids had graduated and passed their classes. And I don't know that I was happy from that. But now when I throw parties, I don't try to relate it to whether the people like me at work or not. I just try to be present and have fun. And I always offer free beer. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Awesome job, Paul. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm loving this Austin, Chicago combo. We've got to do more of this. And also, eventually, we've all got to get in the same place and do this together. Up here, down there. I love the barbecue and everything else.
And have beer, right? We're going to have beer, right?
You seem to be volunteering to bring it, so I'm not going to dissuade you from that.
Got this story reminded me of something you and I had at one point. We wanted to. It was like Halloween, and we were talking about getting like a boombox and a keg, and like if getting invited to a party, but then like basically going and like you don't know anybody there, but then you try to make the party the best party for everybody else.
Yes, like showing up with extra decorations and just like crazy amounts of extra stuff. Brewster, I know. I like how you say we talked about that as if that's never going to happen. That's a future thing. I want to intro our next storyteller. I'm so excited to do so. Also, I want to remind everybody out there, we're thrilled to be telling you stories tonight, but we hope that you're continuing to tell your own. There's opportunities like this. There's things going on online, but also call somebody up. I've talked with some people in the last few days that I don't think I've ever talked with on the phone. And it was an amazing way to get to know them. And, you know, I don't want to look for a silver lining with all of the stuff going on, but you can have tiny little storytelling swaps or shows pretty much all day long as people are waiting to get back to, you know, the life that we knew before this. So I hope that you do that, and you can start that tomorrow or tonight if you want to take a risk of disturbing them, or you're a night owl and they are too. So our next storyteller I met in the last year when we worked together, and she's one of those people. You're going to meet her digitally tonight, but when I met her, she's one of those people that instantly you're at ease and you're like, it's just so comfortable to talk to her. She is a public speaker. She's worked with organizations in Chicago, the city of Chicago, the UN. Her bio is, we could spend the rest of our time talking about the amazing things she does, but instead I think I want to just get her up here. Please, wherever you're at, give a big round of applause or some shouts for May Flores.
First of all, I'm so honored to be in this group of people, just excellent people with their craft and beyond. So this is a true honor for me. You know, I've always been an eternal optimist, to a fault almost. Always childlike in my dreaming, always believed that I could be more than I am, you know. It served me well in many aspects of my life, but it has also been kind of eye-opening when I'm already in the moment of
I think we might have had a freeze on, can you hear me? The rest of you?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
I know May was having some internet problem. Oh, there she is.
Oh, there you are.
I was a working actress in the West Coast, and I was asked by him, by my friend Marco, to say, he's like, you know what, you have such great energy. I really want to help me open a technology startup in India. You know, at the time I was in a moment of transition. I really wanted to pursue something that was definitely beyond my comfort zone. And it was a challenge that I took wholeheartedly. So within 2 months, I got us all visas. I made
Oh no, I think she froze again. May.
You can just wait it out. Hopefully she'll be right back.
and unstable internet. Okay, am I on? All right. All right. Of course, it's when I talk that it's already acting up. So I get to India, you know, already thinking I can do this, you know, I can do anything. I get to India and it's in the middle of the night, Bangalore, South Bangalore, and everything seems peaceful, quiet. I'm like, ooh, India is so great. I'm already getting pretty zen here, the yoga environment, I can feel it. And as we're driving to the hotel, we get to the front door and there is nobody. I mean, I peek in, I'm looking in, and there's somebody asleep on a mat in front of the desk. And I'm going, hello, they knew we were a late check-in. They knew our flight was coming in late. And this guy gets up, hobbles over to the door and opens it and says, May, Marco? And I'm like, welcome. I'm like, it is like 3 a.m. and we were just, the hotel opened for us. So that was my introduction to in my India experience. So the night passed on. I said the next morning, I was like, let's get started. We have 6 months to get this company going, before I go home and work remotely. So the next day, a storm happens and there's a flood warning. And with all of the poverty that you experience there, when you look out the window, there is it is just flooded. Drainage is terrible. People are barefoot running around, and we're on our way out to go explore the city to get our groundings and our bearings. And I'm realizing, like, did I make the biggest mistake in the world? We got in a car and we go to this kind of center square, and we're already sticking out like sore thumbs. I mean, it's not every day you see like a taller Filipina, in the middle of this India, this little town in India, and this Italian guy, and on top of that, he brought his dog. So the dog is in a luggage, and we're standing in the circle. We are a sight to see in a remote town in India. And the car that we are in breaks down, and it's raining. And optimistic me, I'm like, oh, we're going to get the full experience. We can do this. We can just call like a AAA version here in India. We can figure this out. There is nothing like that. There is, everything is rudimentary and more difficult to attain. And we stop in the middle of the square, and I need to go to the bathroom. And they said it would take about 6 hours to even get a car to replace the one that we had rented. So I'm nervous. We're in the middle of nowhere, and I have to pee, and there is no facilities, none. It is small, mom and pop, people selling on the streets, people barefoot, didn't understand English. And I'm going, where am I going to go to use the facilities? So guess what? They're like pointing out into a field, and I have to go pee in a bush behind an abandoned building right behind us. And as I'm thinking, like, I'm going to really do this. I'm going to do this. I can do this. I'm not scared. A bus comes by with a slogan that says, "Incredible India." And I'm thinking to myself, I don't feel so incredible about where I am right now. And so I hobble over to the back of this shed in the middle of this field, and I use the facilities back there, and I am emotional. And it takes a lot for me to really get discouraged when I'm in a mode of I'm going to accomplish something and I'm going to get it done. But I was feeling like, what did I get myself into? How am I going to build a business in a remote town in South Bangalore, India? So I used the facility, squatting, no tissues, no nothing. I'm literally, at my most vulnerable. And I walk back to the car that's abandoned in this corner, and Marco's standing there, and he's emotional. And he's like, I think we made a bad decision. And when I saw him cry, I realized, I was like, no, we didn't. I'm like, no, we didn't. I immediately try to save the situations, which is so typical of me. I'm like, we're going to figure this out. We're going to open that business, and we're going to figure this out. And you're not going to go home empty-handed. And I sure am not going to go home and say that I failed pretty quickly. So it was at that moment when I realized, it was my choice to see the goodness of this beautiful country that I was in. And over time, I really fell in love with it, in the children, in the poverty, in seeing the simplistic way of living, realizing at the same time my capabilities and what I was able to do and pursue for my future. That experience in India really wrapped up for me in a tight bundle of, you can really get through anything. And I only have, to thank Marco, his little dog Cooper, and the situation that we were in India. So India is incredible, and I am so grateful for it. Thank you.
Yay! All right. Thank you so much, May.
Hey.
Great. So I think we're going to keep things moving along, and I'm going to bring up our next Chicago teller. This guy, so he started out by dipping a toe in storytelling, and I started to see him do more and more, and he put himself out there. Now he's begun very quietly and subtly dipping a toe and then doing more and more as far as producing. He created a calendar for Chicago that's amazing. You can find any show on. He's doing, give it a little plug. You can find him online. He's starting to do 10-minute stories during this time when we're all inside. He's gonna put them online for you. And I'm so thrilled that he's a part of this tonight. Please welcome to your screens, Kevin Biolsi.
Thanks, Scott, and thank you for having me here tonight. One day in 1989, I fell in love, which may have come as something of a surprise to my wife, Carol, to whom I had been married for 2 years at the time. But it was just a chance encounter that day as I was flipping through the TV channels and came to rest on a program that was playing music videos. Unaware of the profound and enduring effects the next 30 minutes would have on my life, I started watching, and I was soon captivated by what I was seeing and hearing as the guest hosting pair of musicians played a sampling of their own videos characterized by unconventional imagery and unrelentingly catchy songs. This was my introduction to They Might Be Giants, TMBG for short. In that 30 minutes, this quirky guitar and accordion-driven alternative rock duo would capture my heart. And over the next 30 years, they would serenade me with songs about purple toupees, puppet heads, President James K. Polk, the Mesopotamians, and of course, the birdhouse in my soul. In addition to becoming a huge fan of their music, I also became a collector of all things TMBG. I own well over 100 recordings. I have concert posters, t-shirts, coffee mugs, custom guitar picks. I even have a They Might Be Giants fez, hat. And as a result of having joined their super premium level fan club at the age of 47, just let that sink in for a moment, I have a ringtone, a personalized ringtone on which they sing this.
Kevin Biolsi, pick up your phone.
Carol is actually just sitting a few feet from me right now, and if you all listen very carefully, you can actually hear the rolling of her eyes. So I'm a bit of a fan, but I learned a long time ago that when you worship at the altar of such obsessions, when these extra-familial love affairs, if you will, come into play, your judgment and even your character may be put to the test when these devotions run up against the real obligations of your life. So, 2 examples. In the mid to late 90s, as our 2 daughters were passing through their respective infancies, I would often find myself up at night trying to soothe a crying baby. In addition to walking around with them, rocking them in the rocking chair, reading stories, I would also sing to them. And always in heavy rotation was the They Might Be Giants song, Don't Let's Start, a song I first heard while watching videos on that fateful day in 1989. From that song, I would, of course, always include the whimsical nonsense lyrics, Deputy Dog Dog, a ding dang, deputy dog dog, a ding dang, deputy. And in the context of trying to get one of my daughters to sleep, I always found there was a kind of sweetness in the words, could believe for all the world that you are my precious little girl. But on the slightly darker side, I would also include the verse, no one in the world ever gets what they want, and that is beautiful. Everybody dies frustrated and sad, and that is beautiful. And keep in mind that I sang that verse to these innocent infant children dozens, if not hundreds of times. And yet, in the ensuing years, I've managed to convince myself that I bear little to no responsibility for that permanent tinge of sadness that sits just beneath the surface in the eyes of both my daughters. Example number 2, and I have to move just a little bit further back in time, to March of 1995, when Carol was 7 months pregnant with our first daughter. The band was playing in Evanston, where we live. And given our impending new parenthood, this was likely to be our last concert for a while. On the night of the concert, we sat through the entire opening act that was really not our cup of tea. And then They Might Be Giants came out and launched into their first song. And it was ear-shatteringly loud. A minute or so in, I looked over at Carol, and she had both her coat and her arms wrapped protectively around her midsection, clearly concerned that the excessive volume might cause some kind of damage to our unborn child. We adopted a short-term wait-and-see strategy, but when the second song came on just as loudly, we gathered up our belongings, headed for the door, with me taking just a moment to glance wistfully, perhaps even longingly, over my shoulder at the band. Carol and I exited the theater into the cold, late winter air. And as we started walking to the car, I started to think about the path that had brought us to this point. How we had met and become close friends more than 11 years earlier at the beginning of our sophomore year in college. How a year after that, we were a couple. Another 3 years later, we were married. How graduate school and careers had taken us from New York to Michigan to Illinois. And I thought of how immeasurably everything was about to change for us. How after nearly 8 years of marriage, after all that time of being just the two of us, we would now be welcoming someone new into our small family. And how that parental instinct to love and protect that Carol had shown inside the theater would now permeate our lives. At the car, welled up with emotion, I embraced Carol, kissed her, told her I loved her. And wiping a tear from my eye, I handed her the car keys, wished her a safe trip home, and headed back inside to see the rest of the concert. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin.
Yay.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Great story.
Like, my wife is pregnant. We're having a baby in May, so that was very.
Yes. Roosters.
That's really great. Cheers.
Exciting.
Cheers.
So our next storyteller is a chaplain here in Austin, Texas. Meg, do you want to do the introducer? You're off audio.
No, there we go. Our next storyteller is such a delightful human. Such a joy to be around, and an amazing storyteller and writer, and just has a heart for people. Let's welcome Nettie.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody, all the way from Austin. I'm glad everybody's tuned in. And I put makeup on for this, even though I'm in total isolation, but my pug's enjoying my makeup. When I asked John by email what the theme was to the storytelling, he said, he just emailed me back and he put maybe love with a question mark. And I just thought that was great. So I'm going to do a story about love. And actually, my sweetheart is watching in the other room, and he's probably going to be embarrassed by this story, but it's good because we're isolating in different rooms right now. So that's exciting that if he's embarrassed, I won't get fussed at because I'm in my office. So I was married, and I was married for 15 years. And then I got divorced, and I decided what I'd do with my midlife crisis is I'd go and get my Master of Divinity at seminary, which does not make you more divine, and you don't get a white phone to God like a bat phone or something. But I went there, and we were going to live on the seminary campus, and I wanted to be a hospital chaplain. And so I got my Master of Divinity at the seminary, and my children were very worried that I would never, ever get married again. And so the first semester I was at the seminary, my son Gibson thought up this great idea to get me on Match.com. I think he and my mom had been talking about it. And so he came to me at the dinner table and he said, well, Mom, we're gonna do you a profile on Match.com. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, we're gonna make you a Smiths, and that's gonna be your name. And I said, what's a Smiths? And he said, single mom in seminary. And I just thought that was the greatest thing ever, because I knew I would get a Match.com refund if my profile name was single mom in seminary, and it would be the first ever refund that Match.com had to give. And so ultimately he didn't do that. But luckily enough, when I was in seminary, and I used to be in PR, so I knew a lot of people in the music business. One of my friends, about the second year, I said, I really love to meet a guy that's a single parent like me, just to go have pizza with or go have a beer with. And he said, well, I know this guy and I think y'all could go have coffee. And he said, he's a musician. And I said, oh no, because musicians are great in Austin, but a lot of times they struggle. They have, really struggles financially and stuff, especially right now. And so it ended up that we got introduced on Facebook, and we didn't know each other, but we had all these friends in common. And we ended up deciding that we were going to have a date. And we were both so afraid to have a date in person that we actually drove an hour from where we both lived all the way to the other side of Austin to meet for pizza. And we met for pizza, and we both were under a time limit to have some kismet happen, because we both had to pick up our kids, because he was also a single dad. So we had about, maybe 47 minutes to connect and be together. And it ended up that it went really good. And we decided we would start seeing each other. And one of the funny things that happened, and this is really about how you can find love in the most unexpected places, is my sweetheart would tell his friends, one of his sources of pride would be to get to tell his friends that he was going to go pick up his girlfriend at the dorm, because I lived on the seminary campus. So we were in our mid 40s, and Walter loved to tell people, I'm going to go pick up my girlfriend at the dorm. That was really fun. And then another thing that we had to kind of get through was how many people would ask him if I had converted him yet, and if I had proselytized to him, and if I'd read a lot of Bible verses to him, on dates, and what was going to happen to him if he kept dating someone with a master's in seminary in divinity. And so he would have to manage those questions, and he would tell people I didn't come bearing a Bible on our dates, and that I hadn't, made him memorize Proverbs yet. And then a whole summer, he learned kind of some Greek with me, because I had to study Greek. And so we would meet on a bench down by Waller Creek, which is in Austin, and which is a place he used to go with his friends when he was going to UT 30 years ago. So he was remembering different things that he did at the creek with his friends that weren't exactly what we were doing when I'm talking about biblical Greek. We had kind of different experiences at the creek. And he would listen to me cry about how I wasn't going to pass Greek. And then he, knew the Greek word for love. So he would constantly remind me that, he loved me. And so that was amazing. And the other thing that he did that was really wonderful is he would tell me all the time that I could be anything I wanted to be, and that if I wanted to be a playwright, I could still be a playwright. I would be a good chaplain because I could talk to people and what was approachable to people. And then he started taking me to his music shows because he was a musician. Now, Walter has the same problem that I do, because the instrument that he plays is a harmonica. So we're kind of introverted people at parties and things. And so if we go to a party together and we're in Austin, people will, if you say you're a musician, they'll say, well, what do you play? And as soon as you say harmonica, they'll kind of just go the other way. It's not a beloved instrument, even though he did, was born in Chicago and plays blues harmonica. And sometimes when we're a couple, they'll ask us both what we do. And he might say, well, I play a harmonica. And then they're kind of quiet. And then they'll say, well, what do you do? And then I'll say, well, I'm a hospice chaplain. And then they're really quiet. And then they move away, which is great for introverts because we really don't want to be at the party anyways, and we're not good at small talk. So it's actually, we're a great combination in that way. But one of the things that he has done over our lives is to always stand beside me. And so I was thinking today about a time when he stood beside me when we were first falling in love. And the thing that came up to me, and it's not a story really that I've ever told publicly, is one time when we were at my dorm and neither of us had our kids for the weekend. We were going to have conjugal relations at my dorm, these two single parents. And so we walked hand in hand up to the CVS that was just up the street from the seminary. And we got some things that you might use in having those relations. And we were standing in line together. And I noticed that right behind us was the president of our seminary. And he was in line. Now, he had a Coke. He didn't have what we had. And I'm not sure he would have wanted what we had. I have no idea. I was trying to avoid him seeing me. And I told Walter, well, the president of our seminary is right behind you. And the girl that we had at the counter was really chatty. And there were a couple of people in front of us, and she kept kind of commenting as a good customer service person on what someone was putting through the line. So she said, oh, you've got spicy hot Cheetos, to the girl in front of me. I've always wanted to try those. Are those hot? And the guy before that, she said, oh, that Diet Dr. Pepper. I just can't do the Diet Dr. Pepper. It's just, it doesn't have enough sugar. So then it was our turn, and we had this item that is 2 letters of the alphabet. And you could say it's 2 letters of the alphabet, and then what one might call jam, another name for jam, that you use on toast. And I realized, oh my gosh, she is literally going to try to find something to say about this item to us. And she talks pretty loud, and the president of my seminary is behind us. And this is really going to be embarrassing. This might cause me to get a poor grade in my theology class when I go back next week. I don't know what's going to happen. And so she looked at our item, and she looked at us, and we're much older. And I think she was so stunned that people our age would need an item like that, that she just didn't say anything. And she just held it very carefully as if it was, some kind of odd thing she had never seen before, which maybe she hadn't. She was really young. And so she rang it up, and the president of our seminary was behind us. And I kind of thought that he could see me. And we walked out, and we had a fine weekend of single parenthood. And that next Tuesday, when I was at a chapel, the president of our seminary came up, and he said, oh, Nettie, I saw you in line with this sweetheart that I keep hearing about that plays music. And I don't know if y'all saw me at the CVS, but I saw you in line. And I was just very quiet. And then he said, it was interesting how friendly that customer service person was. But then when she got to y'all's item, she just didn't say anything. And he said, wasn't that odd? And he goes, I had some items that she commented on later. And I said, yeah, that was odd. And I was full in red face. And I don't know if he knew. Obviously he knew, but he just didn't want to say anything. But I thought that was a great way of him telling us that he had actually seen our items. So, I think right now, because of the state that we're all in, we're all thinking a lot about all different kinds of love. And because Walter is my final love, I'll also give a bit of advice to anyone watching. I lived in Austin for a long time. And when I would go see live music, I just always thought the guitar players were absolutely the bomb. They were the ones to watch and follow. And now that I've married a punk harmonica player, what I can tell you is that they just really have incredible lips. They exercise their lips every day. And they have just incredible skills because they practice all the time, with their lips. And so some of you out there, if you're seeing a band and they have a harmonica player and you're thinking, well, no, that's the throwaway musician, I'm not interested. I can just tell you that long term, it might be good to take a second look at the harmonica player. And then I'll say, as a hospice chaplain, I'm really grateful to be in my first year of marriage with this guy, 4 children in between the two of us. And now we will have successfully gone through a pandemic, which I think in any first year of marriage, you hope that might happen because it will test your skills of working at home together. And I'm glad that we've stocked up on items that we have purchased before at CVS. And I'll tell you that last Friday at my hospice, there was a beautiful commitment ceremony. And there was a family that stood outside the windows and watched this commitment ceremony. So even under all the duress that we're all under, and in all the ways that we are questioning what it is that is happening, I can tell you that love abides, and that the best thing we can do is give each other love, peace, and comfort during this time. And I'm so glad that I get to tell this story, and that in the virtual world, we're all together, turning to one another, patting one another, telling one another we love each other. And I just wish love, peace, and comfort for all of you during this time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stand up, everybody. Stand up.
Thank you so much, Nettie. One thing I thought near the end of your story was for all you single folks out there, Amazon's still delivering, and you got a lot of time to work on your harmonica.
Other things, Scott.
Oh,
Other things.
I've always wanted to put like unusual things together when I go through the CVS line, you know? Like,
Nettie, amazing. Thank you so much for that story. It is. I feel like we could do this all night, but of course, any good thing must come to an end. And I want to bring up our final storyteller tonight. She is a theater maker in Chicago, and that is an understatement. She works with the Goodman. She works. She does a program called Generations, which is personal narrative with those over 55. I've met so many people who told me what kind of value that brought to their lives. She does so many other great things too. Now she's going to share a story with you here tonight. Please, wherever you're at, make a lot of noise for Willa Taylor.
Come on, Scott. Thanks, everybody. I've really had a great time tonight just listening to everybody's stories. I think stories are so important generally, but especially in times like this. It's the way we connect with each other. It's the way that we get to know each other and get to know ourselves. So I'm thrilled that that we're able to do this. So, and I'm also thrilled to be on with people from Austin, because I went to the University of Texas, and Austin has a huge, huge place in my heart, and actually in the story. So, so in November, I turned 65. And like every year, I made my New Year's resolutions about what I wanted to do. Now, there are resolutions that are always on my list. So lose weight, get in shape, eat healthy, try to be more organized. Those stayed on the list, and I've certainly made improvements over the years that those have been at the top of my list. But this year, because it was a special year, I wanted something new. I wanted a new challenge. So I decided that I wanted to learn how to swim. Now, I love being in the water. I love going to the beach. I love the sound when I put my head in the pool and that sort of silent roar of the water that I hear in my ears. I love the way my body feels so weightless when I'm in the water. So it is not a question of me being afraid of the water. That's not why I didn't learn to swim. And I can really swim a bit. I can do a crawl. I can do this sort of soldier backstroke that they teach little kids to do. And I can move a little bit through the water, but I can't really synchronize my breathing. I don't have any kick. And so by the time I cross the pool, I'm absolutely exhausted and I can only do one length. Now you would think, because I spent 14 years in the Navy, that I would learn how to swim and I would know how to swim, right? But no, they don't really teach you that. I want to talk a little bit about why I got to the Navy in the first place from University of Texas. So I graduated from high school in Dallas and really wanted to go to a historic Black college. I wanted to go to Howard University in DC, or I wanted to go to Spelman College in Atlanta. But I got a scholarship to UT Austin. So that's where I went. I was majoring in journalism on campus with an English minor. And I wanted to be like my Aunt Jewel, who I had grown up really admiring. She edited and published the Black community newspaper in Dallas that we all read. And she was really one of my heroes. Now, back then, incoming freshmen could test out of classes. So even though I came in actually as a freshman, by the time classes actually started, I was in my sophomore year because I had tested out of a couple of classes. That first semester was really hard. There were 40,000 people on campus at that time. And of that 40,000, there were only 400 African Americans. There were more students from the Middle East and from Iran than there were African Americans on that campus. So it was a little lonely. But by the second semester, I had really sort of found my tribe. I went to a house party one night where they had a bathtub full of some kind of punch that made me very excited and very gregarious. And I never left that house. I went back to the dorm the next day. I packed up my stuff and I moved in. And I found my tribe with this incredible group of artists who were studying to be painters and comics and actors and opera singers. And they really embraced me in a way that I had not been embraced, and I really found a home there. But finding that home meant that my grades really started to slip because one of the things that they introduced me to besides sex and drugs was protesting. So it was difficult to go to class every day when there was going to be a protest against the Vietnam War, or when we were going to chain ourselves to trees on campus because they wanted to cut them down to build another building. And so I spent a lot of time doing that kind of political activist work on campus. The height of that for me was probably the Hogg Fountain, which at that time sat in the middle of the quad on University of Texas campus. One night, a bunch of us in my tribe decided to do an art project. Now, this was really before there was such a thing as performance art. So we feel like we're a little bit of a pioneer in this way. We filled Hogg Fountain with ivory liquid dishwashing soap. And as it bubbled and ran all across the quad, we stripped off our clothes and ran naked through the bubbles. It was fabulous. The police on campus didn't really think so. And so within a couple of days, I got a really polite but very forceful invitation not to return to the University of Texas the next semester. Well, I couldn't go back to Dallas and tell my parents what I had done. That was absolutely taboo. And so I was in a quandary. And as I was jumping out of the second story window of an apartment when my girlfriend's boyfriend came home, I realized that I really needed some discipline or I was going to be either dead or in jail before I turned 20. So I grabbed my pants out of the bushes, I put them on, I walked around the corner, and right there was a US military recruiting office, and I joined the Navy. Now, I asked when I joined, I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a cook like my dad, a musician like my mom, or a journalist, which is what I was studying. In their infinite wisdom, they gave me a language to study. But first, I had to get through basic training. So I shipped off to Orlando, Florida for basic. Now, in basic training in the Navy, everybody has to pass a water survival test. So after the first week, that is mostly physical exams, aptitude tests, learning to march, learning to take an order, the second week, you go to swim class. Now, we have this instructor, Master Chief Crane. He looks like Ed Asner when he was on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, when he was playing Mr. Grant. He's this big, burly chest guy with a very gravelly voice in these very tight swim trunks with a whistle around his neck. And we get there, we split up, and Master Chief Crane says, everybody who can swim, to my left. Everybody who can't swim, get in the line to the right. Well, needless to say, I go immediately to the line to the right because I'm thinking all of us who can't swim, they're going to give us some instruction. They're going to give us some orders. They're going to teach us what to do in the water. Yeah, that's not really the way the Navy works. So one by one, all of us plebes line up on the edge of the pool. And one by one, Master Chief Crane says, jump. So one by one, the people in front of me jump into the water. Some of them flail because they can't swim, but figure out a way to get to the side anyway. Others of them dive in, come up, and dog paddle. Some of them figure out a way to actually do a stroke across the pool. And now it's my turn. And Master Chief Crane says, jump, Taylor, jump. And I am frozen. I just stand there on the edge of the pool. He says to me again, jump, Taylor, jump. And I just stand there. He gets right in my ear. And he says, I gave you an order, sailor. Now get your ass into that pool. And he pushes me into the pool. Well, I think, okay, don't panic. I can do this. I've been in water before. I know what to do. So I let myself sink to the bottom of the pool. I flex my knees. I push off the bottom of the pool and I come all the way up. And I can see it getting lighter and lighter. And I can see the sun sparkling off the water. And I come up and I raise my head out of the water and I take in a big gulp of air because I know now I can get to the edge of the pool. Except I didn't really take my mouth out of the water. So I drank in about half the pool. Now I can't breathe. I'm choking. I can't talk. I'm trying to wave to Master Chief, please, please help me. I'm drowning here. And I'm thinking to myself, so this is how I die. The second week of basic training in a pool, the only Black girl in the class who cannot swim. He grabs the hook, he pulls me out, and as he's pulling me out of the water, I have this flashback. I'm 7 years old. I'm at the YMCA pool in my neighborhood in a segregated Dallas, Texas. We have been swimming for 5 weeks, me and all of my girlfriends who live in the neighborhood. And today is the last day of class. It's graduation from swimming. So all of our parents, all of our brothers and sisters, all of our cousins have come to watch us do this. Now, I am the very first person in my family to learn to swim. So my mother, my father, my grandmother, my grandfather have all come to the pool to watch me. So graduation is very simple. The instructor throws a rubber-coated brick into the pool. It sinks to the bottom. You jump in, you go to the bottom of the pool, you retrieve the brick, you swim to the side, you are done. You get your certificate. One by one, all of my friends do it. They go down, they get the brick, they bring it up, they swim to the edge of the pool. Yay, everybody claps. I got this. I jump into the pool, I go down. I don't see that brick anywhere, okay? I look all over around the bottom of the pool. I'm using my feet, I'm moving my hands. I can't find the brick. So I decide I'm just gonna come up, I'm gonna get some air, and then I'll go back down because I know it's there, right? It's probably, because it's black, probably just on one of the stripes on the pool and I can't find it. So I come out of the pool to get some air, and again, I don't take my mouth out of the pool. So I drink in water and I start to flail. But I'm not really nervous because I know that I can get to the side of the pool. Except then I hear my grandmother, who also cannot swim, say, "Look, baby, it's drowning!" And she runs and jumps in the pool. So now not only does the instructor have to pull me out, he has to pull out my grandmother. So this is flashing through my mind when Master Chief Crane pulls me out of the pool in the Navy. Now, Master Chief says to me, "You ain't leaving here until you know how to swim." Except that that's not really what he meant. What he meant was, you ain't leaving here until you know how to survive. He says, swimming is good to know, but unless you know how to float, unless you know how to survive in the water, how to hang on, you ain't gonna never make it. Because when the ship is in the middle of the ocean, there is no place to swim to. And I thought, yeah, okay, that's right. And then somebody cued me in to who Master Chief Crane was. Master Chief Crane had been stationed on the USS Indianapolis. And the Indianapolis was a heavy cruiser in World War II in the Pacific that was sunk by a Japanese torpedo. And the men of that ship, 3 of the 900 sailors that were only 300 survived because that ship sank in 12 minutes. And they survived for, I think, 3 days before any ship could get to them. So Master Chief Crane wasn't just bullshitting me. He knew from which he was talking. And so for the next 3 weeks, I went to what we called water survival remediation. And he taught me how to float. He taught me how to jump into the pool completely dressed and take off individual pieces of my clothing and make flotation gear. And he taught me to survive in that pool for at least 30 minutes. Now, he belittled us, he cajoled us, he yelled at us, but at the end of that 3 weeks, I could survive, and I knew that I could survive. So now, more than 40 years later, I'm learning how to swim because what I know now is that even if I can make flotation gear and stay out of there, I'm gonna have to at least swim to the lifeboat. So I'm learning to swim, and every time I get in the water, every single time I'm in the pool, I think about Master Chief Crane, and I'm grateful to him. Thank you.
All right. Keep it going for Willa Taylor. And wherever you're at, please make a lot of noise. We won't hear it, but maybe we can feel it for all these amazing storytellers tonight. I also want to say before Meg and John take it home, it has been an absolute pleasure to work with all of you, Chicago and Austin. This has been a really amazing experience. Thank you again to everybody. Thank you, John Brewster, for figuring out all the tech and making this
Woo!
really
Yeah.
crazy, amazing thing happen.
Yay.
That was no easy feat. And we'll do it again, maybe online, but we'll definitely at some point in the future look forward to being in the same room, all these tellers, and having some fun together.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to try it. Like I didn't really want to tell a story because I felt like it was a little bit more. I had to keep pushing the buttons, and it's kind of hard to push the buttons and also like think about what I'd say, you know. But we're gonna do a thing at the end and read. Meg's gonna read a poem, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I don't think I'm going to read the quote. I'm not going to read the quote right now. We're just going to do the poem. But the only thing I'm going to say is the fun story that I thought of is just after doing this for so many years in our backyard, the only thing I've learned is that you can literally do this everywhere and anywhere. And I didn't know you could do it on the computers, but you can do it on the computers.
Woo!
So definitely, if you have a house or a backyard or a pool or wherever, tell stories to people. I feel like this, to me, it's me hearing stories is like one of the most human good things in everything. And all of these stories just reminded me of what it is that this is what life is about, and listening and learning and hearing other people's stories is good.
Yeah.
Good. Yes. Good thoughts, John. All right. So today, or tonight, I guess, I've seen this poem. Can you guys hear me?
You're a little choppy.
It's a little.
My internet, it says my internet is spotty, so I apologize. Can y'all hear me now?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This poem's been circulating, and I taped a bunch of brown paper bags together in my house so I could write it, so I could hang it on my wall because I loved it. And so I just wanted to share this with us as we close. And it goes like this. And the people stayed and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games, learned new ways of being still and listening more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again and they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed images, new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed. And that's by a woman, Kitty O'Mara. I think I pronounced her name correctly. Did you guys hear that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's also like the thing I was going to read was very similar in vibe. So you nailed it more than I would have nailed it.
Yeah,
but
let's
it
give
was-
Meg a big round of applause.
So a few things just really quick and then I'll stop talking. The final thing I want to say is some thoughts that I'm a mental health professional here in Austin. And for anyone listening to this, I just had some little blurbs of during this time, just be kind to your, there is no playbook to this. No, we've never gone through this before. Reach out for support. Try something new or don't be overwhelmed. I just need to survive. Focus on that. Find time to step outside, move your body, even if you're stuck, move around. That's really good for our mental health. Utilize telehealth. There's a lot of mental health counselors right now that are reducing their fees all over, not just in Texas, but all over. So know that there are so many supports. And if you need to know how to get in touch with those, please let me know. I'm happy to connect you to that. Letters to people through the mail or through email, whatever you need. Sing songs, grieve. There's a lot of grief that's happening. A lot of people, this is really hard. Explore yourself if you want to, creative or wherever that looks. Just remember that you're not alone in this. So I think this tonight was a beautiful way of just representing that we're all together and that we're all just figuring this out together, and we still always have laughter and joy and humor and connection. So thank you all for telling your beautiful stories tonight. This was so special. And hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yeah.
All
Good
right.
job, everyone.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, John, my friend Shane up in Dallas wants to do this too. And she pinged me and I connected you two on Facebook.
Okay.
So